Welcome everybody to this Oniro session at Mobile World Congress 2022. Thank you for joining. We're going to be here together for about an hour to talk a little bit about Oniro, introduce it at high level. We're going to introduce a little bit the speakers, then we're going to talk about what Eclipse brings to the table. Oniro is an Eclipse project. We're going to talk a little bit about where does Oniro fit in the IoT and edge space. Then we're going to have member representative of the project telling us why they are part of Oniro. We're going to describe a little bit Oniro from different angles, and then finally just a few remarks and flashes at the end. So I hope it's lightweight enough, and at the end we will have around 15 minutes to 10-15 minutes to ask questions to the member representatives or ourselves. All right, so let's start. First of all, I will introduce the first two speakers. On my left, we have Gael Bolondel. He's VP Ecosystem Development at Eclipse Foundation. And well, my name is Agustin Benito Betancourt, and I'm the Oniro Program Manager, also from Eclipse. And we have three member representatives online, Davide Ricci, Marco Sogli, and Bill Fletcher. I will talk a little bit more about them later on. And without further delay, I will hand over the microphone to my colleague, Gael.
Yeah, thanks, Agustin. So, well, I have a few minutes to explain what is the Eclipse Foundation and why it's important that Oniro is an Eclipse project. So, well, the Eclipse Foundation has been created more than 18 years ago, and with from the beginning a strong focus on vendor neutrality for open source projects. And I think that that's really important. I come back to that in a minute. In 2020, we decided to move the Eclipse Foundation to Europe, and we are now the leading open source foundation in Europe with a global presence and a global reputation. We created the Eclipse Foundation AISBL, which is based in Brussels, and that was established in early 2021. And we also host the code of our new projects like Oniro on servers in Europe. And so that makes the Eclipse Foundation a different organization. So we are a global open source organization, but also, as you can see in our strategic membership, we are also a bit different because we are the only one with a majority of European members in our board of directors, and also a number of in addition to software vendors, in addition to software technology companies, we have a number of research organizations and industry players that makes the identity of the Eclipse Foundation different. A bit different because we are the only one with a majority of European members in our board of directors, and also a number of, in addition to software vendors, in addition to software technology companies, we have a number of research organizations and industry players that makes the identity of the Eclipse Foundation different. And also that makes it the right place for Oniro. Just a few words about, the different flavors about open source. And I was talking about vendor neutrality, but I think that this slide summarizes it very well. Like everybody can have access to open source collaboration platforms these days, like GitHub or GitLab, and that's really, the technical means to start any kind of collaboration. And there are several successful open source projects that just build on top of those platforms. But in terms of governance, GitHub or GitLab, those collaboration platforms don't enforce anything. And I think that the main strength of the Eclipse Foundation for a project like Oniro is exactly that. That's our governance, the full governance that covers all the important aspects of course, business-friendly intellectual property management, predictable processes, so everybody can look at Oniro and understand how it will evolve, what is the roadmap, because that's like any Eclipse project, that's a transparent, open, and meritocratic project. Also, in terms of ecosystem development, we have those cross activity, cross pollination between the different activities of the Eclipse Foundation, but also this openness to all kind of domains and all kind of actors and stakeholders worldwide. And finally, that's certainly the most important one, vendor neutrality, because all the Eclipse Foundation processes and bylaws and everything are all about ensuring that projects are vendor neutral and that everybody from everywhere can contribute as long as they demonstrate the willingness and the technical skills to contribute. And finally, before Augustine goes back deeper in Oniro, in the description of Oniro, we think that open source is a global opportunity for Europe, because Europe is more or less at the middle of different influences, and that open source ensures the free flow of technology between worldwide. And also we see that with the machine economy coming, we will have many more devices, and that we need more interoperability. So that's a topic on which we have been working for a long time already in our IoT and edge computing working groups. But here we add this operating system layer that can really foster the adoption of this machine economy for in an open source way. And with that, Augustine, your turn.
Thank you. Where does Oniro stand in, or where do we want Oniro to stand in the IoT and edge space? And we ask ourselves this question, and obviously, depending on who you talk, you will have a slightly different answer. But we share some commonalities, and instead of going through the topic in detail, we don't have the time. I want to do the exercise of comparing the different industries when it comes to cooperation and competition. What kind of industry do we want? We want something, for example, if we look at other industries in terms of the variety of device makers that are out there providing, running and competing and creating innovation. Do we want that kind of ecosystem, or do we want an industry where device makers are heavily constrained by the software platforms available out there? What kind of application ecosystem we want? We want an application ecosystem that is constrained in the toolkits they use, constrained in the business models they can develop, or do we want an application ecosystem like there are other industries that is richer, that is diverse, where you have a wide variety of different business models. So when we compare what kind of IoT and edge industry we want with what we know today, like server or enterprise industry, or the cloud one, or the mobile one, or the networking one, in every single case, the availability of open source platforms, it's an essential piece of the puzzle in order to enable cooperation and competition, which will lead us to a way more rich business models environments when we think about business models. And if on top of that, not only you have open source offerings, but also open governance ones, or ones that are run under open governance models, then that would guarantee that at least you always have an option where you can develop new business models, innovation without the constraints that we have seen in many other industries today. So, and what we want with Oniro, what we see with Oniro is this platform that will basically allow a significantly richer ecosystem that we see today in other industries on the application front, allowing device makers to compete and to see a diversity of device makers creating devices and being able to interoperate and with each other. So that's the core idea that we see with Oniro. But instead of myself explaining that in detail, and here we have the four elements that makes that possible from our point of view. One of the core elements is this idea of competition and cooperation. You all know about this. The point is how you make it possible, right? We all want to cooperate in commodity aspects or aspects where we need to speed up development, and we want to compete in what differentiates us. This is a point where Eclipse Foundation jumps in and creates the framework to be able to do that. And Oniro is designed in that way. Then there is another interesting point, which is IoT should have a huge diversity in terms of devices. It's having it today, but those devices need to talk to each other. The vendors would need to make sure that the platform they use allows them to do so. And that's where we think Oniro can stand pretty well and be successful. Obviously, the same applies to the applications or the service providers. So we are talking about we need to have open APIs, extensible APIs. We need to make sure that the protocols that we use foster collaboration. And so we are working on that direction too. That's a core element of the value proposition of Oniro. When you choose Oniro, you know that is the direction we are going. The one extra point is this idea of global market, aligning and sharing specifications with other key projects. And I will talk a little bit more later with how we are cooperating with Open Harmony in order to reach that idea of global market, which lies in two principles, right? The specifications, common specifications for different platforms, Open Harmony, Oniro, and hopefully others, and the Compatibility Program, which Eclipse Foundation has a lot of experience on to ease the industry adoption of the software created within Eclipse Foundation. And the last point, I'm not going to insist much because Gael already mentioned, is the other pillar of Oniro value proposition is the vendor neutrality, open governance, open source. Those three elements needs to be together. It's not enough having open source to reach the vision that we have. It's not enough to have open governance. You also need to add to the equation the vendor neutrality element. And at Eclipse, Oniro fits. So, and that's an important step also. So, you know, we are hosting a project that fits in our overall, not just in our overall vision and our idea, but also in what we are actually doing within other working groups. So you see there a variety of projects that are part of different working groups that creates a compelling picture where that is providing to the industry a lot of the pieces that any vendor would need to create complex products. So the last idea that I want to put on the table is that from the Eclipse Foundation perspective, Oniro fits in an overall global strategy when it comes to this industry. And I will stop here and let me introduce now to the online speakers. Eclipse is just a small piece of the puzzle. The real stars of Oniro and any project are actually the members and the contributors. So what we wanted today was to bring three representatives from our Oniro ecosystem. So we have in first place Davide Ricci, which is director of the Open Source Technology Center from Huawei. We have also Marco Sogli with us.
Good morning, everyone.
Hello.
Yes, yeah, good morning.
Good morning, Davide. Marco Sogli, which is head of software, R&D and DevOps at Seco. Hello, Marco.
Hi, everyone. Good morning.
Hello. And finally, Bill Fletcher, Technical Solutions Director at Linaro.
Hello, Bill. Hi.
All right. So in order to start this second slot of the session, I will ask you a couple of questions, and then you guys tell us a little bit more about why is Oniro relevant for your organization, and probably talk a little bit about one or two aspects that makes Oniro unique from your point of view that could interest professionals from other organizations that might be looking at Oniro for the first time. So let me start by Davide, and then Marco, and finally Bill. Please don't wait for me to give you the word. Just speak freely. So let me start by Davide. Davide, can you tell us a little bit why Oniro is relevant for Huawei?
You guys can hear me all right, Agustin?
Yes, perfectly.
Good, perfect. So I think Oniro, in our mind, solves a big issue that we have with the IoT ecosystem, which is not new. I mean, I've been working in open source for quite a while, and if you look at the past 20 years and the role that open source played, it's been a role of continuous defragmentation, from generic to horizontal, and then over time you could see progressive defragmentation. So what Oniro does, in our mind, it does create a common technological baseline and a common group of industrial partners with common intent to defragment the consumer IoT ecosystem. And by defragmenting, I really mean, if you look at what they do every day, today, each device maker, they really have something similar, not quite identical, but they keep reinventing the wheel, if you will, at the operating system level. And they do so under competitive pressure of effectively driving data to the cloud, where the IoT business model monetizes the IoT architecture. So we think that with Oniro, we have the chance to defragment and start building IoT edge devices in a more intelligent way, more privacy, security centric, and more efficient. So that's the promise, and that's why we're involved in it. I think it's good for the industry, and it's extremely good for Huawei if we have an open ecosystem where we can cooperate with partners and even competitors, and then establish this common technological baseline and re-architect, if you will, a bit the IoT so that it's more fair toward device makers, end users, and application and content creators.
And here at Seco, every day we were trying to solve the same issue that Oniro is addressing. So when we heard about the possibility to join our forces, do the same things that we are doing on a daily basis, but at a different scale, and we have no doubts that to join the project and to contribute with our knowledge on an industrial market and with our vision on this. And of course, doing this as a part of an ecosystem under the Eclipse Foundation umbrella exposes ECO to a huge portfolio of open technologies. And this kind of project allows us not to focus on null implementation aspect of the IoT operating system, but allows SECO to focus on what our customers value most. So the support and the development of a broad operating system that is able to run across many different devices. And what makes really unique the Oniro project is the development approach. So the management is the same from a development perspective, from MCU to CPU, and no matter if ARM or x86. So this is something totally new, and this is a great value for us. So this kind of project has been created with this goal since the beginning, and this approach has been from the bottom up. So we have a very solid architectural foundation, and this set the ground for future enhancement. So this is my opinion.
So Oniro is extremely relevant to Linaro because Oniro is a project which strongly leverages open source ecosystem standards and reference implementation. It's our view that those lower software layers should become mutually owned commodities. And Oniro gains maximum benefit from not reinventing the wheel in these areas. And this is especially true in areas like security and OTA. Linaro values and sees Oniro as a collaborative partnership. The value is in conjunction with open source reference projects, some of which Linaro hosts, and also having Oniro available to us as a development platform which is compliant with those standards which the projects implement. So Linaro joined the project because Oniro is potentially the killer app for open source platform standards.
Thank you. Can you guys tell us a little bit more about what aspects do you consider unique? What is that thing that you are most proud of, or do you want to see happening at Oniro, or that you think that somebody that approaches Oniro for the very first time, that hidden gem that is not so obvious and you want to highlight? What can you guys tell me a few data points on that one?
Yeah, so I can get started if you want to keep the table turning the same direction. So I think something that doesn't come across so easily, which I'm very proud of, and I'd like to thank you, Gail, Augustine, and the entire Eclipse Foundation, is that the Oniro project has started open source since day one. This is very uncommon. I mean, you see many times industry players working on technology, kind of behind the scene. That's kind of true for any open source project that you see. And then at some point when they have critical mass of members as well as technology, they look for a foundation, and because the idea is that to expand ecosystem. And that certainly has worked in the past, but for a project that has the ambition of trying to defragment the consumer IoT ecosystem, you need to look for partnerships and sponsorships and support from industry since the very beginning. Right, because the industry is not fragmented, by chance, right? So without industry participation since day one, without seeking for influence and co-development of the technological roadmap from industry players, it's really hard to make an impact and achieve what we want to achieve. So that's the hidden secret, if you will. And of course, that could make of Oniro a project that has a bit of a slow start, if you will. but at the same time, that's probably the best condition for long-lasting stability. That's what we want, and that's why seeking for new members and partners and supporters is number one key priority for us. And I didn't start by technology on purpose, because technology is a tool that serves the business issues and industry problems. And the best way to address the fragmentation problems is to get together since the very day one, and with a neutral supporting foundation since right out of the bat. So I'm proud of this. If you look at technology, Oniro is unique in a couple of ways. So number one, we do realize that the industry most of the time has technology available that is already adopting, and as I said before, device makers build things that are similar, quite not identical, but the best way to get support from device makers and industry players in general is that not to try and reinvent the wheel. Right, so if you ask device makers or a silicon vendor or an application content creator to join, and then you ask them to completely divest from the existing set of technology and expertise that they have invested to just adopt something new, well, it's just not going to happen. So at the Oniro project, we had this mantra that if we need to address technological issues that leads to defragmentation, we better look once, twice, three times at industrial investments that potential members are already making, and then adopt that technology. Right? That makes of Oniro, which is an open source project, a very market-driven open source project, and that's unlikely in the industry. Right? And if I had time, I'd explain you more about the roadmap process. Right? So market-driven project is the second things that really make me proud. And then from a technological standpoint, Oniro was designed to be compliant with IP and FOSS management since the very first day. With the help of the Eclipse Foundation, they have a fantastic IP framework, plus looking at things such as Open Chain 2.0 specifications. We do have auditing, bill of material generation, software bill of material generations built into our CI. Anytime you check in any piece of code, then Fossology, scan code, scan OS, pipeline starts, and then we have a team of auditors from the members of the project that inspect licensing dependencies, friendly licenses, incompatibilities, and they generate this bill of material incrementally so that device makers that adopt this in their devices know that 50% of the work that they would have to do is done by the project. It's not gives them any guarantee because they have their legal team to look into ensuring that the bill of material is indeed trustable and trustworthy, but certainly from a tooling and capacity standpoint, that is a lot of work that the project does on behalf of all of our members. These are really the top three things that I would mention at this point, Augustine.
And also for me, the fragmentation issue that is trying to solve Oniro is very unique because, as I explained, these address devices, different devices, and this kind of device can talk together as part of this project. So there is no technological lock-in. And also a unique aspect for this project, this foundation basic, as David explained before, is the IP framework compliance, which is part of the CI on this project. This is something very powerful for the ecosystem, and even the possibility to test this kind of solution on different devices from different vendors allows for a stable foundation. And the possibility to test the same at a global scale. And as the project grow, as new members will came, I think this approach to reduce the fragmentation and to foster the open ecosystem can only get better. So in my opinion, the fragmentation aspect and the reduce of fragmentation is the most relevant.
Yeah, and Augustine, you asked for what's the hidden gem, and I'll switch that around and say the hidden gem is that nothing is hidden, right? Because the project is completely open. You know, openness is the killer property of Oniro. The unique aspect is the open model for the project, which the Eclipse Foundation provides. You know, exemplary open source governance, and we feel that Linaro helps to complement that. So you have all the governance, all the structures that you put in place, and obviously, we bring some experience of collaboration across hardware platforms, a bit of pragmatic engineering across some of the silicon providers. I see Oniro as having like the best of both worlds in the open governance, people participating in that to set the project's direction, and also the open infrastructure, which is set up to allow the scale out provision across multiple platforms, multiple OEMs. And I think this is a very key point. It's unique because often successful open projects have one aspect. They either have broad open governance or they have some kind of pragmatic engineering approach. And in this case, I believe that this project has both.
Thank you very much. At the end, please stay, don't leave. At the end of the session, we will open a Q&A, some minutes for Q&A, and I hope that you guys take the lead on answering the questions. We will continue a little bit with a description of what is Oniro, just to get an overview. And then we will move on to the Q&A session. Okay, so when we say Oniro is several things. Depending how you look at it, it might be something different. So the first aspect that I would mention is that Oniro is a community in the traditional open source way. So we call it internally, it's the projects aspects, right? It's community-driven open source projects. And the second big element of what Oniro is an ecosystem of organizations, and both are at the same level. And there is the relation between the two is based on different elements, and I will name two. The first one is the platform roadmap. That's done. It's owned by the working group, but it's done in coordination with the open source projects that the working group is umbrella for. And the second very important aspects where both governance bodies or entities work together and relating are the specification, and that translates to the specifications roadmap. So those two are core elements for Oniro. Oniro has a product roadmap, a platform roadmap, and Oniro will have a specification roadmap. I'll talk a little bit about that later. So we have on one side contributors, we call them committers at Eclipse Foundation, and on the other side we have members. And the open source project delivers the software, they release the software, and they release the specifications. And there are well-defined, well-oiled processes on how that happens, how that relates with the working group, how the organizations get into the process, what is the approval process for specification. And what the working group really owns is the Compatibility Program, the program that enables the adoption of those specifications and that software, in this case, the platform, throughout the industry. So when we say Oniro, we cannot think only about the software or the community or the members. We need to also put in place the specifications and the Compatibility Program aspect. So I will talk a little bit about some of those elements now. So let's start with ecosystem, with in Eclipse Foundation language, the working group. So Oniro working group has basically two goals. The first goal is to support the development of the platform and the specifications, right? Engineers need tooling, they need attend to events. They need a lot of things in order to be successful and focus on what they do best. And then the second fundamental goal of the Oniro working group is to ensure that Oniro software, Oniro specifications are widely adopted and is commercially successful. So there is a whole bunch of activities that the working group owns and develops and support in order to reach that goal. I mentioned the Compatibility Program. There are others, like lots of aspects related with marketing or outreach or gathering requirements from the industry, many more. So these are the fundamental goals, and Oniro right now has an ecosystem of 6 members. These are the founding members. There is a wide variety of profiles in these 6 members, and what we have started basically this year is put the word out there and try to talk to other industry players, telling them that this is a great opportunity to join us. So you have representatives from 3 of these members, the ones on the top. In other presentations that you will see about Oniro, you will be able to listen to the other 3 or different representatives from these organizations. And finally, the other point, the other great main element of Oniro is the community, the projects. And in this one, one of the points that I want to make is that probably what everybody understands that is a core aspect of the projects is the development of the platform itself, right? And there are several keywords that are important in this slide. One of them is this idea of connect consumer devices, big and small. So when we think about the platform, we have an implementation for real-time kernels. We have implementation for Linux that allow us to reach out with Oniro, enable application developers to use and create services for a wide variety of devices. This will expand, so we can reach to more type of devices. Then this idea of running any app anywhere. I'll talk a little bit more about that, but that's a fundamental aspect of how Oniro is designed, and also how other elements of Oniro are designed, like the alignment on the specifications with, in this case, Open Harmony. And then the other one is done by the industry for the industry. I think Davide mentioned that in some way. I will talk a little bit at the end of this session about that. So when it comes to the platform, I think that these keywords together with global market are important. And if we look, I'm not going to talk too much about the architecture of the software platform. I'm going to mention a couple of elements only. So I mentioned, we support an implementation based on real-time kernels, in this case Zephyr. Also LightOS is another thing we are trying. So this idea of this is not an operating system. We call it a platform. Why? Because in fact it's a family of operating systems. They are just done with the same purpose, under the same idea, with common tooling, with common processes, with a lot of commonality. So we can reach different devices for different use case, with different tool sets, with different technologies, but we still can reduce significantly the effort that vendors need to put in order to create products based on that. And the other point I will make is if you take a look at the framework layer, if you want to reach this any app, anywhere concept, then you have to offer their application and service developers not just a wide variety of toolkits, but even be able to support different languages. And this is an outstanding technical challenge, So, but we are all for it. So that's our goal, and we are designing Oniro with that in mind. Okay, and the other aspect that I think is worth mentioning is, okay, how do I interact with Oniro, right? So we understand when we talk about platforms, operating systems, you not just move from zero to being a member of the organization or being full in the participation in one step. So we have created what we call blueprints, and one of the aspects of the blueprints, they are several, it's that they are the interface for developers and organizations that approach us for the very first time. It's a way to collaborate with the project in order for those who approach us to evaluate if Oniro could be for them. And so it's a way to collaborate with engineers, with the product people, with the member representatives in a low effort, high impact way, if I may. So here you have, I mean, the blueprints, it's also more things, right? It's also, we build demonstrators, we test use cases, but one interesting way of approaching Oniro is through blueprints. All right, and we have some examples already. For example, we have here Marco. I will mention one, Marco Sogli. The one in the middle, it's a blueprint for a vending machine. Seco produces vending machines. And we created one so they could validate internally the technology tool set, actually the board enablement, that's a Seco board, and the specifications that they work with internally. So they evaluated the viability of using Oniro internally through a blueprint. There are others that you can see there. All right, so and we will have more new ones and more this year. And I will mention just a few details about where we are at, because the project as an Eclipse project started basically on October 26th. And the process from transitioning of being an open source project like it was before coming to Eclipse to actually be a full operational Eclipse project, you have to go through certain steps, and we are going through them. So, and especially in a project of this complexity, it's something that needs to be coordinated and managed. So on the project side, where are we? Well, the project has their own governance body, the PMC we call it, is Project Management Committee. So we have already members appointed, so we have the representatives elected, and they are, from the governance point of view, ready to start. On the working group side, we are a little bit more advanced. So we're going to have on Thursday the second steering committee meeting, which is the main governance body for the ecosystem. Next week, we will have the first marketing committee meeting, which is another governance body. And at the end of March, we will have the first specification committee meeting. So the three main governance bodies of the ecosystem will be fully functional in this quarter. And then, well, I'll talk later a little bit more about this. And then one important aspect of the collaboration, I haven't mentioned it much yet because it's still in cooking, but it's a fundamental aspect of a project. It's our relationship with Open Harmony. I mentioned before that we will have aligned and share specifications that are going to be the base of our compatibility program to reach this idea that we are so excited about of reaching truly global market. So for that, Open Harmony is an Open Atom Foundation project. Oniro is an Eclipse Foundation project. So both foundations are currently creating the legal and collaboration framework for that to happen. So the first step was published back in September. The second step will be published as soon as it's ready. It's cooking at the moment, which is a collaboration agreement, which will put the structure of the collaboration between both projects. And then at project level, we will obviously work together on the specifications. So this is basically a highlight of the timeline. So what is the ultimate goal? The ultimate goal is by somewhere second quarter, maybe with some points of the infrastructure in the third quarter, we have what we call internally on our workflow operational project. So the Oniro is fully operational in terms of Eclipse Foundation project at some point this year. Okay, and I would like to finish this with a little more, a few points from a little bit more personal point of view. I joined the project basically when it started as Eclipse project. I'm a few months now on board, and I would like, just like the member representative did, highlight a couple of aspects, and I close this and open for questions. We have mentioned it several times. I've been also in open source, like many of you, quite a long time, and I understand and I fully support, and I cannot talk enough about how relevant it is, those three words put together. The concept of open source, the concept of open governance, and this one is very important, the concept of open neutrality. Yes, you might move slower. Yes, reaching consensus from the commercial point of view might sometimes be painful, but the relevance and the impact of those agreements on those decisions, on those collaborations is massive when you have a good strategy. And you have especially the second point. Let me highlight one aspect that particularly it's one of the core reasons why I'm here, is that behind Oniro, there is a very solid technical team. Any big corporation that is today in the platform business understands how hard it is to create a very good, solid technical team in this field. Not just because there are very few, but because you cannot buy them. I mean, money is not enough for many of these people. They want to work in the open in many cases. They want to work in projects that are meaningful, that excites them. They want to have certain levels of freedom. So that makes hiring a bunch of 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 of these guys really, really hard. And you know, when you have a great technical team, it's when you can achieve great things. And Oniro has them. Another point is this idea of don't buy the industry for the industry. I think that it's not obvious yet because we are not starting, but we are not a mature project yet in some regards. But one of the things that it will show up increasingly is that it's not just that this is done by the industry. I think that's obvious when you see that this is that there is an ecosystem behind it, but also the idea of for the industry. So a lot of the open source projects, especially in the platform space, they are done by everybody for everybody, right? And then they grow horizontally a lot. And of course, you need certain level of growth in that regard, but you also have to grow vertically. And for that, you need to work having in mind what the industry needs and how you gather requirements, how you are in contact with interfacing with the industry, in this case, the blueprints. These things, at the end of the day, it might not be obvious, but after a few years, it brings a culture in which everybody understands that in a typical open source supply chain, we are not upstream, right? We are close to the industry. So our selection of tool sets like Yocto, or a lot of our decisions are in that direction. The compatibility program, we are leveraging a lot of experience from Eclipse Foundation in this regard. So when you think about who is out there having successful experiences in this area, you immediately think about Eclipse Foundation. So there is quite a lot of experience, a lot of successful experience on how to drive these compatibility programs based on open specifications through a conformance, self-conformance open process. And this is something very interesting. And the other aspect in which I think you will find when you talk to people from Oniro, especially at business level, is how excited we are on the possibilities that our collaboration with Open Harmony might bring us, because this is something that is going to bring a lot of attention, because it might have quite a significant impact. How through open source we can turn down walls and create a healthier competition environment through cooperation. And with that, well, I added a slide because we will provide you these slides. I added a slide with some links. It's an open source project, so you have to put the links to where the code is and where you can get help. Or if you don't do this, it's kind of, am I providing an open source a talk about something related with open source? And that's basically it from my side. So we have 10 minutes, 15 minutes probably. And I will give the time to you, so feel free to ask questions. I'm extremely interested that in having our member representatives answering them. So please, you just have to press the microphone and ask any question. And thank you for coming, by the way.
Hey guys, this is Kai from Bosch Global Software Technologies. So first of all, I like the presentation. When we talk, first a comment and then a question after that. So first of all, when we talk about IoT platforms, we usually think about cloud and edge, right? So, but never really what we do on the device level, right? So I mean, we put a protocol there, right? So we talk, to a gateway or to, something, right? But we never really fight it, and this is what I like about it, the fragmentation here, right? So, I really like that approach here. One question that comes up to my mind, right, spontaneously is, one aspect of the project is to create a developer ecosystem, right? So, and just interested to know if you think of doing things like hackathons or even Plugfest and so on, or if this is like, happening through the compatibility program, right? So, I mean, just a question in this direction.
Augustine, do you want us members to?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Okay. So I do agree with you. I think that's the end goal. If you also think about it, right, from a device maker standpoint, Bosch, I'm sure that you guys are under tremendous pressure from a price standpoint and time to market standpoint to try to deliver devices out there. And the only point of monetization, it happens to be in the cloud. If you think about it, right, so all applications, all devices are kind of connected in the cloud, but that's not the most natural place for devices to cooperate. It's inefficient. They rely on gateway to be connected, and then you lose the monetization point, which is closer to the user, and without considering how much data of the user is sent back and forth. So trying to re-architect it and rebalance it, I think, is one of the underlying goals of the project. So how do we make it happen? So we had to somehow create the concept of, if you will, a super device That was a word that was circulated originally when the project got started. If you go by AI terms, that's called an agency. And if you think of devices being agents. So how to go about that? So that's a problem of classical AI, if you will, and a problem of leveraging existing communication and plumbing frameworks available in open source to build the communication infrastructure. So all of this is discussed in a couple of places. So there's the specification committee, which Agustin mentioned, which we're gonna kick off very soon. And then there's a specific sub-project, which is led by the Polytechnic of Milan, and sees the participation of Seikos, Synesthesia, and all of the members who wants to participate. And that specific project has the goal of identifying communication and plumbing infrastructure that is open source, that we can equip each of our Oniro devices with, whether they run on Linux, except for FreeRTOS, LightOS, doesn't matter. Once that infrastructure has been identified, and so far we've gone through the analysis of 3 potential options: MQTT, libcoop, and Xeno, which is another Eclipse project, and we have opted for libcoop because it's standard. It has an RFC that documents its behavior. And then once it's done, we're going to have to do a couple of things. Use classical AI approaches such as the ontologies to effectively describe what each device can do. You know, I'm a door opener, I can open a door. I'm a camera, I can take pictures. I'm a thermostat, I can tell you what the temperature is, so that each device, through this communication framework, can just disclose and broadcast what they can do. 2, a coordinator, which is a device in the house that has enough compute. Think about a gateway, for instance. And so this also poses a third problem, which is how do I elect the coordinator in the house that has enough features that make this coordinator something which is stable, has enough compute and storage to coordinate all of the agents inside the agency. Once that's done, then it's about distributed computes and just taking the definition of a problem, matching it with the description of the agents in the house, and just dividing up and conquering. So taking the problem and just dispatching to all of the devices in the house instructions on how to carry out a distributed task. So this is not going to be ready tomorrow, but we are taking approach by design through which devices can broadcast where they do elect a coordinator which can see everything, and then that coordinator in the agency can be trained by user tasks and routine, or also learn over time. So to your question, specification committee, sub-project for this intelligent agency, and yeah.
I would like to add that obviously we have gone through this pandemic, but we had the opportunity to meet at SFSCon in Italy, in the north of Italy, and we had a hackathon there for the developers to come. So, answering the second part of your question, the first opportunity we had, we did it. And obviously we will have to do this online, but definitely EclipseCon will be there, FSFCon next year, this year also. So we will have several opportunities to bring developers together and just try it out and see how it works and provide us ideas. Yes.
Does that address the question? Because I took the long way to address it as my usual.
Yes, all right, thank you.